Friday. I haven't because I would like to meet you guys separately. Because you guys all have similar interests with different interests and like personalities. Kind of get a read of it. Yeah, it was great. Told him to wrangle.
All right, I'm going to call this 9th meeting of the 13th Undergraduate Senate to order. I will begin by calling the roll. Senator Hakami.
Here.
Senator Pintar. Senator Hawk.
Here.
Senator Hanash. Senator Dantzler.
Here.
Senator Burgess.
Here.
Senator Meekum. Senator Chen.
Here.
Senator Adams. Senator Polinsky.
Here.
Senator Najafi.
Here.
Senator Koshman. Senator Fryer. Senator Kenna. Senator Martine. Senator Morrow.
Here.
Senator Mejia.
Here.
Senator Zitzman. Senator O'Connor.
Here.
Senator Leaney.
Here.
Senator Nayar. Senator Beaton. Senator Aljaber. Senator Howard. Senator Legitimacy.
Here.
Senator Agdepa.
Here.
Senator Robbins. All right, cool. Quorum is met, so we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda? Yes, Senator Najafi. Resolution 1718-018, right? Where would you like it added? Any other discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, it will be adopted without objection. All right, moving to the adoption of the minutes from the 8th meeting of the 13th Undergraduate Senate. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, it will be adopted without objection. Moving to public comments. First to the student trustee, Fernandez.
Hi, everyone. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Valentina Fernandez, and I'm the student trustee on the Board of Trustees. I'm also the only undergraduate student in President Burwell's Strategic Planning Committee, developing a 5-year plan to shape the university's long-term vision. So I just wanted to come here and kind of say hello, check in, give you a brief overview on what's been going on and what my position exactly is. I actually meant to come last week, but unfortunately my successor, Sada Graywall, wasn't able to make it. She was also not able to make this meeting, so I was like, I figured I'll just come and kind of just tell you a little bit about her as well, because I've heard there's been some budget conversations, and I think that's a super important topic. And I just want to make sure we're making informed decisions, understanding how the budget process works at AU, being a resource to you in any way I can, as someone that watched last year's budget pass when I was shadowing former student trustee Shaheen Sneed, but also letting you know that the person in the boardroom when the next budget is being passed will be Sada Graylaw, so I will no longer be the student trustee then. So kind of to just give a brief overview of the role, so there's only one student trustee. The student trustee represents undergraduate, graduate, and law school students. So when you're applying for the role, you're competing against grad and law school students. So you're not solely representing undergraduate needs. Second, the student trustee role is not an advocacy role, and I cannot make that any more clear. There are agenda topics that the board chooses to discuss, and as a trustee and as a student, you give your input. It's really not okay, well, today I feel like bringing up XYZ issue. It's like, no, today we're talking about XYZ. I want to make sure that I'm giving my student input, how some of these policies, how some of these things are affecting our campus The way they treat the student trustee is the way they would treat any trustee. You're looking out for the university's long-term interests. You're not advocating for anything specifically. So you're not thinking what is best for AU tomorrow. You're thinking what is best for AU 20 years from down the line. What may be best tomorrow will not make AU competitive, efficient, sustainable, financially, socially, in any possible way 30 years from now. So you have to keep that in mind. It's open forward thinking. The board's main mission is really the fiduciary responsibility of the university. How can we make sure that we have the money to keep running? We can have all of these goals and like all of these aspirations, but how are we funding them in a way that will actually be here for a while, not just short term. A lot of the work I do is also working with the graduate and law school students. Like I said, I'm not just representing undergrads, but making sure I understand what's happening in their communities, especially because it's such different student populations. A lot of the students in grad and law school aren't traditional students. They're part-time students, have full-time families, like whatever it is that they're doing. So just keeping that in mind and having a general pulse. Who I report to, so generally there's no one I really report to. I have a very close working relationship with Chairman of the Board, Jack Cassell, President Sylvia Burwell, and any other university leadership administrator. So we're close with Dr. Ah on a day-to-day basis, just having general conversations. But anyone from VP of University Communications all the way down to the photographer, the chief of staff that runs like everything for board meetings, and President Burwell as well. So it's really a holistic role in understanding of how the higher education institutions run. With that being said, I also kind of wanted to touch a little bit about what the role has been historically and what I've done as well. So historically, to be very upfront, the people that have held the role have been either graduate students or law school students. And if we're talking demographically, also like white students. That changed a lot when Shaheem entered the role. He was the first student of color we had in a while. And then he worked a lot more so on the search committee for President Burwell and finding the next university president. Then I came in and I worked more on actually working with President Burwell and contributing to the boardroom discussions. What I will say is, even though the student trustee doesn't have a vote, my voice in that boardroom makes a difference, and it does matter, and it's credible and respected, and people listen. You're walking a fine balance between understanding how a higher education institution runs, but also inserting how certain things would influence students and affect students' everyday lives, right? Some of the things that I've done personally, so this was the first year ever that we had a student trustee, like student and trustee breakfast for the November board meeting. This was in addition to like a lot of different engagements that we've done throughout the year, but we tried to do what I tried to do is be intentional about what students were brought into these discussions, because I think having a student trustee is great, but it's also important to interact with your general student and like ask them questions and actually get a sense of what campus life has been. So we invited over 60 students, undergrad, grad, and law school students, worked closely with the two other presidents to compile this list. And we included representatives from cultural organizations, NAACP, LULAC, CLASO, really, LGBTQ, Center for Diversity and Inclusion, what peer wellness educators, K Spiritual Life Center, really something that would encompass what our student body actually looks like to the highest extent, AUX students, transfer students, veterans, really a wide range. We had over 40 students show up, and we had them in, like small like breakfast style discussions. It was like 3 trustees and 3 students to a table, built a lot of significant relationships there. They got to interact with the board chairman, President Burwell was there as well. So it was a great event. Some things I've also worked on has just been increasing the visibility of the role a little bit. So you may have seen my beginning of the year op-ed, kind of just introducing myself, describing what the role is, how I can be of any help, or how you can be of any help as well, because it's a two-way street. And then also increasing my social media presence, which hasn't been something that's consistently been done throughout years. Sometimes you have one student trustee that doesn't, then another one fosters, then another one doesn't. But what I will say about social media and even like reporting to bodies such as like the Student Government Senate, it's a little bit tricky because a lot of the information that I deal with is confidential. So there's not much I can say that a campus memo doesn't tell you. I'd be happy to clarify any things, kind of explain a little bit what led to that discussion. But other than that, like we're not trying to like bring down AU here. So just work with me. I'm happy to answer any questions, but just keep that in mind. And then who's next? So we have Sada Graywell taking over. She is the first College and Arts and Sciences Senator trustee that will be on the board of trustees. She shadows for an entire year and then takes over the role after the May board meeting. I'm sure she will be great and she'll be happy to talk to a lot of you. Our next board meeting is actually this week, Thursday and Friday. I sit on a couple committees on the board. I sit on the Finance and Investment Committee, Communications Committee, Campus Life, and Academic Affairs. I'm not really sure if I can share a lot of the nature of the conversations we'll be having this board meeting, but what I will tell you is that the board right now is currently committed to diversifying its body and also having a lot of crucial conversations that we're having at this level as well. So with that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the student trustee, Senator Zitzman.
As you know, here in the Senate, we've been having a big conversation about whether we might want to pursue advocacy of a fixed tuition at AU. And as far as you're concerned in your role, I've heard a couple of different times either Valentino says that's a good idea or Valentino says that's not a good idea. So since we have you here, can you clarify for us your thoughts on a fixed tuition at AU?
I'd be happy to. So I think a fixed tuition is a great idea 20 years from now, not today. Maybe 50 years, who knows? Our endowment is extremely small, especially compared to our peer institutions. We're not in a place to be doing that. We have to understand that AU is a tuition-dependent institution, unfortunately, as of right now, and we're working on that. We're in the midst of developing the capital campaign that President Burwell is working really strongly with the Board of Trustees to develop a comprehensive approach to. But I think we need to be realistic. So, when we think about a tuition freeze or a tuition lock, whatever it is, we're primarily thinking of low-income students, right? And like we want to make sure that when they're entering AU, they're paying what they told they would be paying. With that being said, we also have to understand that our financial aid comes from tuition. So you freeze tuition, you lock tuition, great. You're taking away financial aid from incoming students and current students. That's what I would say about it. I think we need to remember what our budget model is. And unfortunately, it's not an AU problem, it's a higher education problem. Should higher educations be revisiting what our budget model is? Probably. I think that's going to be a discussion in the next 10 to 15 years because demographics are changing so vastly, and it's something difficult that institutions are grappling with. But right now may not be the time to be having those conversations. I think maybe focusing on, and this is up to you, but I think maybe thinking about and reviewing how the breakdown of the budget has been, how much is going towards the tuition discount rate, kind of just informing students why we are having a tuition free, not having a tuition freeze, why tuition is increasing and what it's going for, may be a better tool for helping students. So for example, last year, when the budget was passed, the board increased some funding for Office of Campus Life, and with that, we were able to get another psychiatrist. So like making sure that our budget is being used for student support services and helping our most vulnerable students is something a little bit more important, I think, given our circumstances and what we're working with. Yes.
Hi. Just out of curiosity, have you by any chance read my bill on tuition affordability by any chance?
Did you send it to me?
No, but it's published usually on the ASU website.
No. So just to clarify as well, I'm also not a part of student government, so I don't have an AUSG email or anything like that. But if you guys are working on things that interest me, I know you met with me and I kind of gave you my input. But you wouldn't assume that I have like access to this. Yeah.
that not based on your position as a student trustee, but just as an ordinary student?
No.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So what I actually highlighted in this bill was actually what we talked about in our meeting together about how it is not, an instantaneous goal, but rather a long-term achievement. So what are, I guess, I'm assuming that this doesn't have to be disclosed because it's your own personal opinion and probably formed it through sitting in different meetings, but what is your take on, or I guess, how do we make AU less tuition dependent and how do we grow our endowment? Because I've spoken to a lot of experts in the field and some schools have majored or mastered how to necessarily grow or move or transition from being more tuition dependent to being tuition independent, and then putting their resources in growing an alumni basis. And actually, I remember us even talking about the mission, vision, values, right?
Yeah.
And you said that Senate can have a part in formulating these values. So I guess how can we as AUSG kind of jump in and help out? And then also, what is your take on making AU more tuition independent?
So to your first point, making AU less tuition dependent is a vision that anyone can get involved with, from trustees to President Burwell to students. Like, it's what we need. It takes a lot of time. Part of the reason why we're so tuition dependent is because in the grand scheme of things, we're such a baby school still. We're still defining who we are. We haven't been around that long. So some of the things that are being done to help change that, understanding that it will take years to get there, is the development of the capital campaign, which is essentially like fundraising for AU. That includes strengthening alumni relationships, identifying any potential donors, making sure that President Burwell is meeting with the right people, making sure that our deans are having an active role in reaching out to any potential donors, families, anything that can help increase AU's level of gifting. With that has also been clarifying what our vision and what our story is. So what is our story? What makes AU stand out and how can we sell that? Because we have all of these great things going on in our institution, but it's not great if they're just staying here. So that's what AU is working on right now. And I can tell you it's a long process. I can tell you there are people working really hard on it. Courtney, I don't remember her last name. So Courtney is someone who leads a lot of the efforts with alumni development. We have people from all levels of the university doing this. What role do students have in this? It's tricky, but I would say if you reach out to anyone in the alumni office, if you reach out to any dean, really being like, I heard that you're working on trying to get more money for SBA, for example. What are you trying to get that for? Can students help in any way? Like, reaching out to those direct contacts, I think will be the most efficient way that students can help.
Awesome.
To your second point, can you remind me of what the question was?
It was more so about how AUSG can get involved in the
Mission values. Yeah, so we actually held a couple focus groups. So Dr. Ah reached out to me and Nina, who's also the other student in the President Burwell Strategic Planning Committee. She is a graduate student. So mission, vision, values is kind of part of the development of our strategy plan, the discussion we've been having. So what President Burwell believes is that it's important to have a vision we can all get behind that essentially develops what the nuances of our actual strategic plan are. We had a couple focus group sessions that were identified by Nina and me, like the students were identified. It consisted of students, faculty, and staff. We had over 80 students invited. So we had a couple of them. And for the first session, it was students that had a really clear understanding of how AU functions as an institution. So we had Shaheem, former student government president Devontae, things like that. And then the other one was student selected, just randomly representing different communities. So it was I made sure to include AU Dems, AUCRs, Network of Enlightened Women, cultural organizations, things like that. And then on Friday, there was a bigger one that was open to anyone. It was weird how, it was just different how many, different schools chose to communicate it in different ways. So like the School of Communication sent out a mass email to everyone in SOC to attend. So that was just a miscommunication, but it is something that's still being developed. There's been a lot of revisions to it based on student feedback. It has been taken very seriously. Right now, what we're doing is we're putting a pin on mission, vision, values to actually keep on developing the strategy. So what we're going to do is we're going to break into subgroups, and then from there create specific things that need to be addressed within the 5 years that this plan will be implemented. With that being said, if there's people in this room that would love to look at mission, vision, values and want to get their input, I'd be happy to, if maybe you want to compile a list of names, and give them to me, and I can reach out to you and arrange a time to just hear your feedback, because I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Senator Polinsky?
Moving on from tuition, there's been like a lot of talk about possibly divesting from fossil fuels. So I was wondering just what your thoughts were on that, and if you think it poses a financial risk if we do divest.
Okay, so this topic's a little bit tricky, and I'll tell you why. So you hear Georgetown chose to divest, GW, I don't know, whatever other institution. They're saying we are chosen to divest, right? Because they were having direct investments in fossil fuels. AU does not have direct divestments in fossil fuels. So AU can come out and say, look, we divested, and they'd be doing the same exact thing the GW thing. What we do have are like indirect, like some of our investments may be indirectly like investing in fossil fuels, but it's really, and when I tell you, I believe the number is like 1 or 2% of our funds come from that. You never know if it if it presses like a financial risk for the institution, but it's really a small percentage. We're doing already the same thing that a lot of the other institutions have said we're divesting. Like we're doing that exact same thing. We've never directly invested in fossil fuels. And also, I don't know if a lot of you have seen this, but there's a whole memo that came out. I think you can Google it or I just don't remember the name off the top of my head. And it was the board explaining their decision, and how they chose to came up with the green fund as well as an alternative. They changed the name from the green fund to the fossil free fund or something like that. Just because it wasn't directly investing in like green efforts, but rather making sure that whatever we were investing in didn't have any fossil fuels in it. But if you want to take a look at that, it was kind of like this alternative, like this. The board made a commission to look into this specific topic, composed of faculty, student, and trustees. They came up with their plan, and that's what it came up down to.
Senator Robbins?
Thank you for being here. I'm just wondering, because I heard you say, right, it's hard for you to come to these kinds of meetings because you can't really speak on certain things you're talking about. But you also say on the one hand that, like, you're supposed to represent the interests of the students. I'm just wondering, can you maybe just for all of us speak to like who are you consulting to making sure that you're representing the interests of the students? Like, are you going to like club meetings? Are you holding like forums or office hours? Just because I'm a little bit unclear, like where does that consultation come in to make sure you're representing the interests of the students?
Yeah, so just to clarify, sure, I'm bringing in student perspectives, but I'm not representing students. It's not an advocacy role. I'm a student in the boardroom. And that shapes the conversations in a way that people sometimes oversee. So like, if you're talking about academic success and you don't have a student in the room, having a student in the room and having a student of color will really change the conversation. Now, as far as holding office hours, whatever that may, like things like that, it's a hard line. So I'll tell you this, I know it's been tried before by former student trustees, and what it came off as was very patronizing, if I'm being completely honest. People did not take it well. They were just like, who is this removed person coming in trying to understand what mine, like it was not done in a correct way. And it's a fine line to walk. But what I will say is that I'm much more than a student trustee. I'm a student of color. I have connections, like I have friends that have lived through a lot of the conversations we're having. I am an RA, I've been an OL, I was involved with AU Dems. And also I understand that I don't have the answers to everything, which is why I've done the breakfast, forums, things like that to bring in different students to the table who otherwise wouldn't be there. Because regardless of how many office hours, however many club meetings you're going to, there's never one 80 student. And even if you are going to, for example, like I don't know, like a first generation meeting, like there's not one type of first generation student. So for me, it's been about bringing in different types of people whenever I have the chance and getting the board to directly engage with them.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you. So 2 questions. One, going back to the fossil fuel thing, can you clarify and explain the financial mechanics behind indirect investment and why that precludes us from full divestment? And then 2, I just want to get your opinion on the fossil free AU advocacy group at American University. I know that they take a pretty oppositional stance to the university, and I want to know if you think that they're actually having a positive impact on what the university does as far as divestment goes, or if they're not really accomplishing.
So to your first point, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not a finance person. I cannot give you the nits and grits. However, if you look through the memo that I pointed towards earlier and have specific questions, I'd be happy to send it to the people that can answer them. To your second point about fossil free AU, I think it's a tricky subject. Students have one view, the board has another view. I will say this, like I respect all of the work they're doing. And I've been in active communication with a lot of their members. In fact, at the beginning of the year, I helped arrange a meeting between Fossil Free AU and board chairman Jack Cassell and our chief financial officer and the board's secretary and Dr. Ah. So I'm in here I will do anything to make sure that we are equipping our student organizations with the information they need. What they choose to do with that information after a meeting is completely up to them, and that's not on me to comment on. I respect their hard work and commitment to what they stand for, and I'm happy to be of help in any way. I know they also so when I met with them, we were able to arrange the meeting with Jack, Doug, with Bonta, and then afterwards, it was David from the president's office also told them that they would be able to get a meeting with President Birdwell in the spring, which did happen as well.
Senator Mejia.
I have 2 questions. Thank you so much for being here today. First question is there any talk about adding another student trustee? Just because, one student's voice is so powerful that having a second voice, be able to have more presence on different committees and stuff like that. Has that been talked about at all? And then the second question is about worker studies. Does that come up during board meetings? Have it been a topic brought up during board meetings? And is it something that you see the board addressing, or that it's more an issue that's being left to the president and students?
So to your first point about a potential additional student trustee, so there are very few institutions that have a student trustee at all. And the position is fairly new, and the board takes a lot of pride in the fact that they have a student trustee. And I take a lot of pride in holding the position because it does hold influence and because people respect student input. I'm not sure if that would be something the board is interested in doing because it's already so rare. And because just to give you some context, so the way the board room works when we do have board meetings, so you have your middle table, and that's where all of the trustees sit, including the student trustee. And then you have like a side table, and that's where the staff council president, student government president, graduate leadership president, and student bar association president sit, and the student trustee-elect who's observing. Whenever there are specific questions that affect specific communities, they will turn and ask. So they can turn to whoever the SG president is and be like, oh, we heard this, what's going on? They can do that. Another thing you should know is that each of the student government presidents gives a report to the board. So they need to be called on in order to speak at a board meeting, unlike the student trustee. But they do submit an official report, and it's usually 4 or 5 things they've been working on or updates on campus climate, which kind of ties into your question about workers' rights. No, it hasn't been a point of discussion, but it is something that maybe the student, whoever the next student government president should consider implementing in their report in order to bring it up to the board level.
Senator Chen.
You mentioned earlier that the last budget year, they just need more money to office campus life and they decided to hire a psychiatrist. Do you know if the board of trustees would be interested in doing that again, or is that a discussion that they've had about counseling center in terms of the lack of number of psychiatrists?
I'm not really sure exactly. What I will say though is we've had a lot of conversations about mental health and what that's looking like, not only at the undergraduate level, but at the graduate and law school level as well. It's unfortunate that we're having to have these conversations, but I'm also really happy to see them being had in the boardroom and taking them in such a serious way. We've had people from the wellness center come in on report, data, like surveys, everything. We've also like, beyond like mental health services, whenever we're talking about diversity and inclusion, for example, we have we've seen the campus climate survey reported. We've shared our own personal experiences as well in that room. So I'm not really sure exactly not that there isn't a level that they're aware of what the campus climate situation is. I'm not sure specifically what that will translate into.
Senator Kami?
So I actually created this news network that is grassroots and pretty random. It's called Campus Progressive, and recently I sat down and had a discussion with Fossil 3AU, and one of the points they brought up was that they recognize that the student trustee does not have the ability to vote, and the chair of the student trustee is not an advocacy role. But you as a student trustee, well, outside of the position, right, hold a lot of, political power. I guess what they would like for me to be asking in the situation right now is if you could take a stance on divestment, considering that you don't have to, but I mean, even to just come to a meeting and to show support, and if the student trustee-elect could, because I know that during their last meeting, Wednesday around 8 p.m., they were talking, about the future of what we're going to be doing this coming board of trustee meeting on February 22nd, and how also we can get their voice in the room, and the fact that oftentimes just us as elected representatives or us as appointed representatives can have the most impact by just being a supporter, right? And just showing, just support. So I was wondering, how do you, as I guess just a student, where you are, how do you necessarily see your role as an advocate? And the only reason I'm asking again is just because the students have kind of brought this to my attention.
Okay, so it's tricky. I feel like I've been saying a lot, but I think a lot of the issues we're talking about are so complex that it's hard to sum up our opinions in a 5-minute discussion or however, even an hour. They're so complex and nuanced. With that being said, I think even beyond holding this role, I see the topic in such a different way because of holding this role as an individual. Right. So yes, divesting is important. With that being said, we have to understand that we're not making direct investments in fossil fuels. I think, so I agree with divesting as a whole, as a concept, but I think we need to understand where AU falls under that. And I think as far as AU divesting, we have to understand we're not divesting on direct fossil fuels. As far as the 1 or 2%, as an individual, I think it's tricky. Given the financial aspect, and my personal opinion, I don't know.
Sorry, just as a point of clarification, we have a board of trustee member who has history as an Exxon executive, and also for AU, basically has created now a laundry list of ways that investing in clean energy alternatives actually would grow our endowment. So all I'm suggesting is that if a group of activists have done all this research and have comprised, I think, Gracie's will be a page of a 20-page list of ways that clean energy would help our endowment, and maybe therefore lead us to being tuition independent, a lot of interrelatedness. But I don't know, it seems kind of logical to me to be able to maybe bring this up during the board of trustees meeting as an alternative solution to even indirectly investing in fossil fuels.
I mean,
challenging those.
No, I think you bring a great valid point. I think there was a lot of room for discussion when I arranged the meeting with Chairman Jack Cassell and Gracie and I believe it was Hannah from Fossil 3AU. If they've developed more research and have specific strategies and tactics that maybe they didn't have at the time that we met, I'd be happy if they email it to me, and I'd be happy to forward it to the person they met with, David Taylor, just to have him take a look. And also Doug, who's our chief financial officer, so that they can give their input. But I think it's a two-way street. Like there has to be an ongoing conversation between administrators and students.
Would that be your role to kind of bridge the ongoing conversation?
Their information is public information, like public access as far as their emails, but I'd be happy to I already made the connection. If they want another connection, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Senator Najafi.
If you have any more questions,
Yes, on that note, if anyone has additional questions, you can forward them to me and I can send them all to Val as well. So,
And also, sorry if I can add.
no, yeah.
I was a senator my freshman year. Like, I get it. It's tricky and it's hard to be like, what are all of these different positions and like, how can I help? And it's frustrating at times, so many times. Trust me, I've been there. Just know I'm happy to help in any way. Just reach out to me directly. I think sometimes we forget the power of conversations and a simple coffee talk like the influence that has. So I'm here as a resource. Reach out to me. I'll be here. Thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to reports from officers. First to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director, Payano.
Can I ask somebody to give me unlimited time? I will not take 40 minutes, promise, but it's like, because it's my first presentation, I do have a lot of information to just sort of throw, because you guys have a lot of diversity and inclusion bills, so I'm just gonna clarify.
Is there Senator Najafi? There's a second. All those in favor say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. All right.
Good, thank you. Okay, we're gonna have a community conversation, because that's what your Senate and your community, whether you want to see it or not. On diversity, equity, and inclusion. So bear with me. So I wrote this as an overview. So I'm just gonna sort of talk about and clarify, update, and inform you guys of the past, current, and future work that I see that I've done in my role, and that the future people that take my role can do and will do, because I'll make sure. Anyways, so just to give you guys a rundown, because I know that not all of us have time to go and search for data or the actual data. This is the actual breakdown of students at AU since 2017. So yes, we haven't had time. It's February, people. We don't have the data for 2018 yet. But as of now, we have 66% of our student body that are Caucasian, 13.6% that are Hispanic or Latinx, 9.3% that are African Americans, 6.5% are Asian Americans, 4.5% are multiracial, hey, holla, 0.2% that are, nope, we meant to say Native Hawaiian is 0.1% and 0.2% is Native Americans. I apologize. So to clarify why I have the 11 here, these comprises the numbers of both domestic and international students, right? So if you're an international student and you like say, hey, I'm Latina, you're automatically put in this 13.6%. However, that means that 11% of this breakdown are international students, which is why I think that it's important to include them in this body some way, shape, or form, because they do comprise 11% of our body. Okay, next slide. As of now, AU defines diversity as individual differences, personalities, learning style, and life experience, and group social differences, aka race, ethnicity, class, gender, sexual orientation, country of origin, age, and ability, as well as cultural, political, religious, or other affiliations. This is as January 5th, 2018. This was written by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, which, by the way, they're awesome. If you guys want to go see their website, they have pretty cool research. And it was edited by the President Council on Diversity and Inclusion. because, and I'm gonna make that metaphor, so bear with me. So I have this picture of a cake, right? To make a cake, you need different ingredients to make the mix. With that being said, I think that that's sort of how it represents our campus, right? We have different people, and we're trying to make the mix work, right? And that's what diversity is. We need diversity in order to make this mix that makes AU like AU. And I think that when we're talking about diversity, we need to look at AU specifically, not necessarily nationwide, although they sometimes interchange. But there's something about AU and our community that makes it a different higher ed institution. Continue. Equity, the way that we define equity is the creation of opportunities for historically underrepresented populations to have equal access to and participate in educational programs that are capable of closing the achievement gaps in student success and completion. This definition was done by the President Council on Diversity and Inclusion, and I chose an open. God, listen, when you're trying to make this fun, I was looking for graphics, and I didn't want to choose graphics of people. So I was like, let me go to the least controversial thing, which is a cake. Because we all love cake, or I hope so. So this, and I take the oven as making success, right? And making sure that the mix, when we put the mix in the oven, we're making that success, which is making the cake. Next, inclusion. We define inclusion as the active, intentional, and ongoing engagement with diversity in the curriculum, in the co-curriculum, and in communities, intellectual, social, cultural, geographical, with which individuals might connect in ways that increase awareness, connect knowledge, cognitive sophistication, and empathy, understanding, of the complex ways individuals interact within system and institutions. This was also written by the Association of American College of Universities, and it was edited by the President Council on Diversity and Inclusion. The reason why I give you these words is because sometimes we use diversity, sometimes we do inclusion and equity, but our definitions are different. And when we're having a conversation, in a community conversation, guess what? That diverts. Because for me, diversity is racial diversity, and I like block out everything else. You and I might have a conversation, but you might include a group that I am not including. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we know what they is. Inclusion is making sure that the mix work, but that the mix work again for American University. Yes, there's a lot of tension outside of AU. Yes, I recognize that we should be involved nationally. However, when we're talking about AU and the climate and what makes the climate as it is at American University, we need to look specifically and start with small steps. Because although we want to eradicate, we need to start where we can start. Make what you want with what you have. And that's important. Next slide. Okay, so as you guys all heard, President Burwell has launched this Inclusive Excellence Plan. It's very comprehensive, and I know that we all have homework to do, and some of us might or might have not taken the time to read it. So I just want to give a brief overview, and because I don't want to be here forever, feel free to stop and we can go over it. I was part of the President Council of Diversity and Inclusion, and we dealt a lot with this plan. We met with Makiba K, which was the consultant that we hired to make this plan possible. So how was it developed? So we used data collected from international institutional research, the campus climate survey, which I'm going to show you guys in a few, the NSSE, which is a national survey done by the American Colleges.
Association of Colleges and Universities.
Yeah. Focus groups, because we did focus groups, the RISE fundings, and other things. We also have listening sessions and stakeholder meetings. Now, can we have every single person in these focus groups? No. In fact, it's actually pretty hard to have a solid group of 30 people show up to a focus group. We tried, we reached out, people showed up, and I'll tell you some of the findings that we had through that. In collaboration with the external consultant, which is Makiba Clay, and she sort of analyzed our campus climate, a sense of belonging, education, providing training to faculty and staff, which is important, and infrastructure, policy, and procedures. Next. With that being said, there are departments at AU that are in charge of doing surveys. Like, we pay them to do surveys. One of those surveys is the campus climate. And this is how it is. Fewer students of color and international students say they feel included on campus compared to white peers. 33% of African Americans here feel like they're included on this campus. And I don't know about y'all, but I find that a problem. I mean, granted that they're 9.3% of our population as it is. 56% of the international, 59% of Asian Americans, 59 Hispanics, and 71% of white students feel included in AU. And international students are not US citizens or permanent residents, and instead are here on a student or other non-immigrant visa. I want to make sure that we have that down. Okay. Next conversation. So the framework for inclusive excellence. AU's diversity, equity, and inclusion roadmap is framed by the concept that inclusion and excellence are inseparable and mutually reinforcing. Inclusive excellence is a framework used by American Association of Colleges and Universities and used by many universities across the US. What makes this framework is that we can take it and make it our own. How many of you guys were, just to take a poll, on the talk that President Burwell had with Julian Castro and Alma? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just wanted to clear that out because I think that when you're a senator and you want to be engaged in these conversations, take any opportunity. I know we have classes and I know that whatever, but like when you're advocating, please go to these meetings. Please partake. If you can't go to one, you can go to the other. And if you cannot, come talk to the people that make these meetings or that you think somehow has an influence or political pull. And we'll try to include you in one of those focus groups. And if you need to be excused from a class, Fanta would gladly shoot an email to any of your professors saying, hey, we need them in X. Can you excuse them? So, not saying to put your guys are student first. And that's my motto. We are student first. But at the same time, I want you guys as representatives to be as informed as possible because bad legislation comes from not understanding. And we see it with the current administration, not to single out anything. What you need to understand the problem, not only from what you hear in perspectives, but also from data. And I think what this inclusive excellence plan does is that we cannot claim excellence without inclusivity. Because guess what? We're in a very interchangeable world right now. And we have these little things that connect us. So I personally do not want to concentrate my energy on people that are trying to stop what I stand for, which is what I'm presenting to you today. They're distractions. I'm trying to work with people that are willing and invested in making the time to make this happen. Next slide. So we have a PCDI page. I don't know how many of you guys know that. Please feel free to check them out or check us out since it's still part of it. They have some pretty cool data. They also have the inclusive excellence plan on it. And they also have a glossary of how, when we're having this conversation, we're going to define these different words when we're having these conversations. So with that being said, PCDI Listen has held 6 sessions in residence halls this semester. We had them at Hughes. We had them in Anderson. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen this. We basically just sit in the lobby, have a table. We offer pizza for those that want to just get the pizza. And we listen. We don't write that student's personal information. At any point, do I ask for your name? At any point, do I ask, what I ask is, how do you identify and tell me your year? So the way that my report comes in is Latina female senior. The most broad definition that you can get. So I know that many of you guys might be concerned with that, so I just wanted to clear ahead of time. PCDI has met with the Muslim Student Association, the alumni and students who identified as politically conservative because they're having some issues that I think that in a higher institution we shouldn't have. Although AU is mostly liberal, I do believe that there should be a free exchange of thoughts because that's why we're here, right? And something that makes a great debater is to be able to understand the other person's side and respect your side and try to come to an understanding. And if an understanding is not possible, accept it. There's some people that we can just not change their mind. And I think that with this plan and what we're trying to create and what President Burwell is trying to create, instead of said, let them think, but let's move on with the majority of our students and our faculty and our staff and our parents. So we have also met with the Interfaith Council of Case Spiritual Life Center. They're amazing people. I think you guys should go visit them. They're like literally, like even if you're not spiritually related to them, but they have different religious representatives, it's just great to talk to them. A group of 15 students, organization leaders. Now, me, Lauren Lumpkin, who also still sits in the PCDI, me and her and Amara, and there's a grad student, we all sort of made this meeting with student leaders from different multicultural groups, which were recognized at the time. So I understand that we're gonna do the same thing this year, and I would love if some of the senators wanna show up. I'm more than glad to include you guys, because you guys are leaders. And basically we just had a discussion. We try to get to know each other as friends, because we're a community. And like then we can discuss all these intertwined problems that we have, but I think that connection is key. Multicultural alumni group, they're fun. We met with the president of the Black Alumni Association, as well as with the LAA, and they were cool. We also met with the Asian American Pacific Islanders, I think that they kind of call themselves, which is a fairly new affinity group. And there's like 100 others. I just can't mention it from the top of my head. But glad to provide that information if you guys so wish to. PCDI has brought together all the key stakeholders that are holding training and development sections. These include the Center for Teaching, Research and Learning, Faculty Leadership Development course under the Provost office. Do you guys know who they are? Like, raise of hands. Great, good, we're on the same page. And then human resources. I don't know if you guys know that HR is developing some cool training surrounding diversity and inclusion on this campus for staff. We're trying to expand that to faculty, but we're having a bit of, not a pushback, but like faculty are concerned of your freedom in the classroom because, you know, some professors got their PhD 30 years ago and are afraid that, you know, your PhD, I'm not gonna get into that, but you guys probably know where I'm headed. With the help of an external consultant, develop a diversity statement and refine AU-specific definitions of key terms such as diversity, inclusion, and equity. And that was done January 5th. So it's pretty recent work, and it's things, these are all things we're still doing, and we have done way more. Now, our term as PCDI is to listen and to connect people. And once we connect and listen, we go to President Burwell and said, this is happening. And then I don't go to President Burwell. I have had conversations with her, but the chair, Kylene Jennings, and the co-chair, Jeff, that's how I know him. He's the dean of SOC. He's a cool guy, if you guys know him. And they go and they sort of present to President Burwell what's happening. And then I've had my own conversations with her. And let me tell you, President Burwell is all on this. Like, if you guys cannot read that based on the work that she has done and based on all the research and resources she has spent on developing this plan, I don't know what else would convince you guys. But I do want to say that this is something that not only is she thinking, but the Board of Trustees is taking very seriously. And like, just know that us, SG, the way that you guys can help is organize and like compile accurate information by doing your homework. Like, cannot express that enough. Next, future action items. So, PCDI, the Director of Inclusion, I think, should help in a potential transition retreat for multicultural group leaders. And what I want to do with this retreat is sort of work on transitions. You know, like when an e-board changes completely because they all go abroad and then they leave new people in the position and the leaders are like, well, I don't know what's new. And I think that that is going to help us with the institutional memory that we have. Because every 4 years we switch. So we need to have a solid transition in order to make sure that information is being passed down. Because something that came out of the conversations that I had with student leaders were like, well, so-and-so that graduated 2 years ago told me that I shouldn't work with this group because they did X 2 years ago. I mean, I don't think that that's, and like our freshmen is being affected by this. Like our freshmen are always so confused because they're like, I don't know who to believe at this point. Like it's a very interesting thing. So I think this is something that whoever takes my position on can definitely help. Set a date for more PCDI meetings with different student groups. And I'm more than happy to have some of you guys attend this meeting because I think it would be cool if you guys heard what people are actually thinking. Continue to program events to foster communities. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you guys sort of some of the events that I'm working on with communities around campus to foster community, not only within their group, but cross campus as well. Increase on-campus involvement of international students. Like I said, they're 11% of our campus. When I meet with them, what they say is, we cannot come. They cannot come to the retreat that we have at the beginning of every year because they have to fly out from their country, right? So they can't go. Therefore, they don't know how American University works. Therefore, when they're asked to be involved, they're like, this is not how our country works. Because believe it or not, most of these students come from high school where they go to school and then they leave. This whole extracurricular thing that we have going on is mainly US focused. Like, I don't know how many of you guys have gone to international schools or have had the opportunity to like meet somebody who's international, but ask them. And that's sort of what I get. And a lot of them say, as soon as I said, hey, you should join Senate, they're like, I never thought of that, but something to keep in mind, something that I'm interested in. Creating multicultural community boards. So for the Latinx graduation and the Black graduation ceremony, we have created comprehensive community boards that comprise of different groups on campus that represent those identities. With that being said, we have our issues because like I said, Fulanita de Tal told me that this person does not like me. And then you talk to that other person and they say, no, I've never said that. So literally 90% of it comes from rumors that are not based. But anyways, I'm not saying that all of it is unfounded, but most of it, sometimes it's just a he and she said. And working with alumni relations to bridge students and alums. Now, this is when you guys come in when we're talking about increasing endowment, right? If you meet an alumni, say the truth, say how you feel, but at the same time encourage this alumni to donate. Because the reason why Harvard, and like all these big Ivy Leagues and all these big schools have such huge endowments is because they have alumni that donate back. And if we're trying to get more, and don't get me wrong, like President Burwell, prolific fundraiser. Like I've never seen anything like her. With that being said, it's gonna take some years, but if you meet an alum like, hey, we're still tuition dependent, I have tuition issues, but we need to bridge that gap and we need to engage with our alumni. Because if we keep not engaging with them, we're gonna, not raise our funds as much as we would like to. And I know that our endowment seems big for us, for students, but compare our endowment to like peer institutions or even Harvard or Yale, like massively low. Anyways, continue. So, possible events to cultivate campus community. And I say this when I mean it. If you all want to help me out, I am more than glad to take it. My calendar is literally like class, meeting, class. Anyways, so we're gonna have a spring cultural festival, and on the quad, hopefully, if the weather allows it. If not, we're working on a backup space in order to increase understanding of international cultures. And we're working on the hashtag. So if you have any ideas for hashtag, let me know. But the hashtag that I'm thinking about is promote understanding. We're working with the international office, so Director Bakar, who's the director of the international office. My boo here, Rafael, helps a lot with that. So please feel free to also contact him. And we're aiming for March 2018. Yeah, well, we're playing with the 24, but like, I don't want to promise you guys a date, but we're having our first interest meeting, not meeting, but community meeting on the 21st, this Wednesday, so if any of you guys are interested. Then we're gonna have a affordable housing symposium. I don't know how much you guys are into the housing market. I know that sometimes we try to advocate for a lot of the things that are essential at AU, but I don't know how many of you guys know the rate of homeless people in DC. I don't know, well, probably. We need to start as students thinking about how can we impact our surroundings. And affordable housing is an issue that affects not only Latinos, not only Black, not only whites. Like, this is an issue that is upcoming. I don't know how many of you guys are from New York, and you guys know the rent in New York. It's like off the roof. California, come on. Chicago, come on. So what I'm trying to do along with Rafa is create topics that are gonna bridge people together despite their ethnicities or their affiliations, but that they all feel like they're bonding together and having a discussions on issues that affects all of us rather than just one group. Then the Latinx graduation banquet, there's gonna be dancing, folks. And I'm working with Lasso, LULAC, all of them. We're having a committee board, and we're planning to celebrate the accomplishments of our graduating members of the Latinx community. And then we have the graduation ceremony, which our VP is helping on and sits on the committee as well. And it's honoring all graduating seniors who identified as Black and are of African diaspora at this graduation event. The ceremony will be a celebration of success achieved by our graduating seniors. And with that, thank you very much for listening. Any questions?
Yes, questions for the director, Senator Kami.
I just have like 3 questions. The first is, can you guys make a MENA category? Because oftentimes in censuses, I don't even know that, right?
Census? The census.
Right, so there's never a Middle East or North African category, and then we're kind of placed into the white section, and that's just not accurate information. If you can, that would be probably the best, thing ever. The second is, does student housing fall under the affordable housing symposium? Because student rent to live on campus is insane. I know that Senator Polinsky was thinking about writing a bill to address that. If that in any way, shape, or form can be brought up in that symposium discussion, that would benefit a lot of kids who live on campus.
That's an idea that we can play with because we're actually trying to make it a 3-stage kind of thing.
Right.
So the first phase is just getting the student body interested in the subject. The second, we're thinking about bringing some speaker that can speak to different side of another issue. And then the third one, it might be something local and something that affects the community. So please talk to me and we can work on where you want me to include it. And I can make it happen. I can see why not. Okay.
Other questions for the director?
Please hit me. I know you guys have a lot of bills coming up the pipeline for diversity. And I want to clarify anything on inclusive excellence plans. So please hit me with the questions. No?
All right, thank you.
I thought this topic was going to be more controversial. Great. Good.
All right, moving on to Judicial Board Chair Wills. Wrong one.
Hey guys, I have 4 slides.
Time is
that's not
yours.
one of them. So I have 2 things to do. One is to tell you about, you can do it next time. Just to report on a judicial notice that I did yesterday or the day before. There was kind of a question of whether the question was on what's the definition of a competitive race. So basically it's just if you're appearing on the ballot yourself, it's not competitive. So that affects the leadership grant. Next. Okay, so you have a new proposed judicial register. I just wanted to go over it quickly now instead of when it comes up so I can have a visual. But the current judicial register, this is why it's a problem, just click once. It says right now that the board may remove any member of student government from their current position and any further appointed positions. But if you click again, the Constitution says the full undergraduate senate shall have the full final word on removal from office. So it's things like this that don't really make sense to me. And if you click one more time, it happened because at the bottom, which nobody really read, I think, it says affirmative vote of this judicial register constitutes the Senate acknowledgement of a delegation of impeachment authority. That's not good. So basically, next slide, changed all that. What I proposed does three things. It limits the power of the board to comply with everything in the Constitution and the bylaws. It decreases the need of the board for just minor inquiries. Like right now, if you just have some little problem, you have to take the whole board up and it doesn't make sense. And another one, it just simplifies the process, which is on the next slide. So this is just a really easy visual that I made to explain it. If you have any questions, let me know. But basically, somebody submits something. If it's a case, it'll obviously go to a binding decision, but if it's just a question, it'll go to non-binding. And then these are the three types of cases, and I kind of added the informal resolution that doesn't really exist right now to make the process faster and more efficient. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Questions for the J Board Chair, Senator O'Connor.
I believe the previous chair warned me that there was a section in the register that needed superior to the bylaws. Yeah, is that still in there?
No, so I explicitly stated in this new judicial register that is a legislative document and a policy book. So that's something that you might want to debate.
Other questions for the J Board Chair? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, moving on to some quick reports. One, I'm going to stress this again. If you cannot attend a committee meeting, office hours, or full Senate meeting, please inform whoever's in charge. That way you get an excused absence, not an unexcused absence. That's all I'm going to say on that. And I am currently working to connect senators with your with your next steps for legislation. Please meet with me. Don't forget about the first couple pieces of legislation that you passed last semester or earlier this semester. That way we can move forward and see if you've done any extra work, if you need help from me or Cheyenne. I'm continuing to do that. I'm making my way, making sure that everyone is reminded or remembers that they passed legislation, a couple weeks ago. You don't want to forget that. Want to follow through with it. Also with committees, you don't need legislation to meet in your committees. And you don't have to be the chair or the vice chair necessarily to encourage your committee members to meet. Because you can talk about future, if you want to all do a piece of legislation together, or just talk about, updates to what you're doing regarding your committee, especially the ad hoc committees. Since legislation is definitely not referred to your committees, you don't people forget that you don't really need to meet, but you should and are required by my legislative order, to meet at least once or twice a month. So be sure to do that. Be sure to encourage your chair or vice chair to meet if they're not setting any meeting times. So yeah, that's it. Oh, and be sure to send me meeting minutes and attendance record so I can keep that up to date. Besides that, again, reach out to me. I'm in the office a lot, a lot of hours during the week. So usually if you just stop by at some time, you can find me. And we can talk about the legislation, see what's next. I'm waiting to hear back from the Faculty Senate. I got an email response from the chair of the Faculty Senate. She said that it'll be a couple days because she's dealing with some family things. But that's moving forward. And then also I'm in the process of meeting with Fanta to sort of also help push forward some of the legislation and see what we can do in terms of next steps. So, yeah, that's my report. Any questions for me? Okay. Moving on to reports from committees. If I recall, the only committee that met this week was the Committee on Rules and Privileges. And we had the 2 bills to consider. Those were both favorably recommended without any changes. And you should have gotten an email around 12:30 with those 2 bills plus the resolution that was added. That's it for CRP. Questions on that? All right. No advising from student activities, so we'll move into new business. To Bill 17-18-019, a bill to reform the appointment process. Let me find it. Would the sponsor like to speak on the bill?
Yes, so I realize this is riddled with grammatical errors. I apologize. I wrote this on like a solid 1 hour's sleep and I did a lot of Red Bull, so it's pretty incoherent. However, I just wanted to get this on paper so it could hopefully be referred to committee and I could have some more time to work through it. If you would just allow me a little bit to articulate the intention behind this. It had been brought to my attention, I want to say like a month or so ago, I believe like Senator Kami, that we really don't know the makeup of our student government because appointments under the bylaws are, so we're not arbitrarily, but they're decided by the executives and they aren't required, if they are unpaid positions, they aren't required to notify the Senate or any other people outside of their specific branch. And so the purpose of this was to, one, keep a running number of appointments made just in the interest of transparency and making sure that both the Senate and by proxy the student body knows the makeup of the student government. And the other thing I was kind of toying with the idea in my head of adding another layer of verification for appointees. The purpose of that wasn't to add undue strain on CRP. I don't foresee this actually having to be put into action. That being the vote of no confidence. The only reason I put that in there is just as a formality, just to say like, if there's like an especially like egregious charge against one of the appointees, that it would just provide another level of verification. But I would hope that the Senate would refer this to committee so I can have a little bit more time, have a little bit more hours of sleep, to just update this and reword it and make it look pretty.
Questions for the sponsor? Senator Legitimacy.
Don't really understand what you're trying to do, like specifically, so could you just like explain it in your own words?
Sure. So right now, all unpaid appointments are made arbitrarily by their respective executives, insofar as they don't have to go through any sort of confirmation process. They don't have to be made public, or they do not have to be made public in any way, shape, or form under the current bylaws, which is fine. Like I don't want to have to I don't want the Senate to micromanage the appointments of different people within branches. What I do want is for those appointments to be made known to the Senate, and by proxy the student body. So this change would basically just make it so that make up different branches of student government insofar as appointments, just to make it known. That's really it. Like, there's not much to it.
Question, Senator Najafi. So I will say that the only things that are listed in the bylaws, the only flow chart that there is, are the directors under each cabinet, whatever ones that are specifically defined. Besides that, under each, like especially in the vice president's cabinet, like or in each group, the director gets to decide how the makeup is. There could be precedents for how the makeup is, but the bylaws don't specifically define that. You want to, yeah?
Yeah, so, yeah, just to clarify, like this, the intention of this is not to, like I said, micromanage the different directors or executives and how they set up their individual cabinet and their appointments. It's just to make those appointments known to the Senate. Okay, so that's fine.
Vice President Self?
I have a couple questions. So in the bylaws, it says that each executive cabinet their cabinet, outside the ones that are already clearly outlined. And so and it's just also with APU and stuff, there's staff under them as well. So is those just maybe to tell you every single person and have you confirm, not put down every single person within 2 members?
Right, so just like
overreach.
So it's not, the way that I foresee this being implemented is that when a new executive takes over, they literally just send us a Word doc of names and positions, and we see it in CRP, and we look at it and we say, oh, good. And if there's some name that jumps out for whatever reason, which I do not foresee happening, it's just like a precaution. I just put it there because I'm weird like that, but yeah, basically we would get that list, we would say, oh great, we see the makeup of the cabinet, we would then put that out on a Facebook page or something, or you guys would do that as well. It's just in the interest of transparency. This is not in any way, shape, or form meant to micromanage or do any sort of overreach on the various directors. This does not change any sort of power or autonomy that y'all would have.
Senator Zitzman?
All right, so first, my question and note is that the secretary, as far as Senator DeJohn's question about a list of student government, the secretary is mandated supposedly to compile a directory of student government, and a couple months ago he was working on one, so hopefully that comes around soon. But then my question is, if you want, if the intention of this was to create a system of notification, why didn't you say that the executive, why didn't you do that? Why did you add this section about a confirmation process?
I would not articulate it as a confirmation process per se. The intent was to just make it as a fail-safe, so to speak. Now that I think about it and getting concerns, I don't really think it's all that necessary, to be honest. And I think this would just be fine as a notification process. And that's why I wanted this to be referred to committee, and so I could just get more input on it. That was kind of
All right, questioning has elapsed. Without objection, the bill will be referred to CRP. Okay. Moving on to our next agenda item, the clerk will read the legislation by name and title.
Bill 17-18-20, a bill to mandate an annual assessment of AUSG's diversity.
Would one of the sponsors like to speak on the bill?
So this is something that I worked on with just as a means of promoting diversity and kind of showing the way we've progressed over the years going forward. And it's something Young is also interested in what the director of diversity and inclusion with the president's cabinet would basically do is they would put together a survey that would be sent out to all members of SG, within all of these organizations listed, and anyone who just falls under SG, just to get a holistic view of what our makeup is demographically and just diverse-wise. And it says under section 2, what the data that that would be gathered, and then also it's like up to the discretion of who holds the position of director. And so it's just a means of like promoting and like reaching out to other people and showing what our makeup is, the kind of who we represent, and if we're actually reflecting that.
Questions for the sponsor? Senator Mejia.
I'd like to yield time to Rafael.
You'll have to grant him speaking rights. Someone want to do that? Senator O'Connor? Is there a second? All those in favor of granting? No, wait, no, you're Senator
I'm
Dancer's
proxy.
proxy. Okay, never mind. He's a proxy for Senator Dancer. We're good, yeah.
Oh, okay. My question would be, is this just a survey for SG, or is this a survey for campus-wide?
This is just a survey for SG so that we can show like what student government like who we're representing the student body, like if they're actually doing that. And just like another note is that like we talked about with like the student trustee position and past positions within AUSG and outside, like a lot of them have been like historically white or male, and like this is like a good way to say like going forward, we want to break that stereotype and we want to also get other people.
Senator Polinsky?
Put him in group first. Does Yami have, Yami?
Yes.
Does she have speaking rights?
Yami does, yeah.
Okay, so my question's for you. What would you, like, I think this is amazing. Just what would you do with the data? Would you,
So that's-
what do you see people doing with it?
Right, so that's something that I was texting the sponsors about last night. I think that it would be nice. Currently, we don't have any international students, not one. And it would be like a good way to say, or suggest to the body to do a specific targeting to X group, which is not on the bill yet, but since this is going to committee, it gives us time to sort of review and write a purpose for it. We can definitely not, say, but I feel like the diversity of this group has increased mainly because of the targeted, some of the targeted campaigning that Will did when he was speaker. Because Will, I was appointed, right? And there's certain things that I feel like have led to the body be a bit more diverse. And I just think that this would just let us be where we lack and see how can we best target X communities. And I think that it's a great initiative. It just needs a bit of polishing.
Senator Kami?
Just out of curiosity, but this could also be taken, I love the idea, obviously it's one co-sponsoring, just hope that there's like a step 2 to this, because it can also come off as tokenization of minorities, because the minute I swear to God, I step out of this room and I go in the quad, everyone is white and I don't know. So for example, in We Gonna Be All Right, the book that we read before we came to AU, schools like University of Wisconsin put people of color on their brochures, and then when students of color came to campus, it was a predominantly white school. So I'm hoping that there can be a step 2 to this, where it says, look, your elected representatives are people of color, and this is what we're gonna do, to create.
So can you clarify it in terms of because I feel like, just clarify a bit your question, because I'm confused in what we do this step 2 to be, because I agree, right? We don't want to be the only token Latina or the token Black person in the room or Middle Eastern, I get that, but at the same time, it's the fact that the reason why this whole initiative exists is because we're low anyways.
Right.
So I hope that as an advocate and as a representative, you don't see yourself as a token, but rather as a voice that is needed in a body. And, and I think that, of course, we can always extend part 2 or part 3, but I also feel like you are basically stepping into this position. So I hope that before you nominate yourself or even run a campaign, you understand with this report that you're the only one. Now, would that deter you or push you forward? Now, that's a conversation that we can have.
Well, I don't tokenize myself, but
No.
Right, but I'm just saying
I was putting it as an example.
Sure, thank you. So I love the idea, but I do think that this kind of data should, I don't know necessarily what the steps should be, but because you're director of diversity, equity, inclusion, I think all the co-sponsors, including myself, would love to work on how we can utilize this data and to create more effective change on campus for people of color.
Is that a question?
Instead of just, so do you agree?
I definitely agree. I just think that as elected officials, we already have that power. So I don't understand how can this data specifically for SG would indicate a change on the campus body when we're already doing that by sitting on this, in this body, because we're representing a diverse point of view that many people won't have. But I'm more than willing to like hash it out with you after this, and we can definitely talk, but I agree. I mean, if we can find another way of making this a bigger project, I'm more than down.
All right, other questions for the sponsor? Yeah, Senator Jaffe?
Just like as a response to Yasmin's question too, like realistically, like we can't force people to run. We like can't go up to people and be like, you're running, like you're diverse, let's run. It's like about giving a tool so that people see this, people inside of SG and outside, like cultural organizations can see this. Like, why don't we have like more Latinas in here? Like they're like, okay, let's have someone run. Like let's have someone who's very passionate and can do this. Let's like fill that gap. And then internally so that we can assess like going forward. Is this changing? Are we progressing? I think that's what that survey does.
All right, questioning has elapsed. Without objection, this bill will be referred to the Committee on Accessibility, Transparency, and Accountability. Okay.
Wait, when do they meet? Do they?
Mondays, right?
Who is it? Great. Can you send me the time? I would love to sit over here.
Moving to the next agenda item, Bill 17-18-021, a bill to establish an incentive to get professors publishing on the Open Textbook Network. Would the sponsor like to speak on the bill?
So I wrote a resolution, maybe like a month back about the Open Textbook Network, and basically illustrated how we want to hopefully in the long run get more faculty members and professors publishing on the Open Textbook Network. And so I have been dedicating pretty much like 3 days out of every week since then to working on a bill or progressing some sort of movement in regards to this. Just like as an FYI before I get into like the nitty-gritty aspect, I've been communicating with Salman Azimi, who is the vice president of the Open Textbook Network group, I guess you can say, and he has actually gotten me in contact with Open American representative. So basically the dude who runs Open Textbook Network at AU, David, and we'll be having a meeting sometime next week with Caitlin Vix, who is Salman's intern, and we'll pretty much hash out whatever happens to this incentive. If it doesn't pass, I can just, we'll still be having it anyways, but. The importance of this is that, at least in AU's terms, 17 professors are currently published on the Open Textbook Network, and there's only 15 courses that are available on this network as well. We have around like 3,000 students who are utilizing the Open Textbook Network, and that leads us to like around 42% of the general body that is aware of what's going on. And out of that, like 42%, 300. So the overall textbook savings have been around like 393,000, which is really amazing if you just think about how like monstrously expensive textbooks are. And to kind of elaborate more on that, so the cost of textbooks since like 2006 has increased around like 73%, meaning that it's 4 times more than the rate of inflation, and like it's 112% higher than it was at least 3 decades ago. Why this is so shocking rather than just pure craziness of the statistics is that 94% of students opt out of buying textbooks, and I've actually done that as well, and 48% cite inability to pay. There are certain classes that I have not even bought the appropriate materials for because, one, I can't even afford to go here, 2, the textbooks are even more of a financial burden on my back and my peers' backs. So I'm taking a class called Poverty and Culture led by Steph Woods. She is an incredible like faculty member, but she's also an AU grad from the AU's law school and is also dealing with a lot of like financial burden, whether it's with tuition debt or even just the cost of materials that she has to take loans out of for paying. And she has this amazing quote in regards to the Open Textbook Network, which is, I teach discussion-based classes, and the ORE, or the Open, you guys know what it is, have helped enhance the caliber of discussions. In addition, the updated readings have broadened the students' knowledge of American history, politics, and culture, whether students minor or major in American studies. This entire access to free materials will help out their overall knowledge growth in years to come. And I can say that probably the one class where I feel most secure with the amount of materials that I have and the access to the materials and what I'm learning is her class, because she utilizes the Open Textbook Network. And so the bill itself kind of lists out a bunch of different resources that we can tap into and we can advocate for when talking to whoever's in the provost office, specialized librarians, and also just faculty senate and financial aid advisors. And the websites that I plugged in are just, well, they can be hashed out and taken out during committee meetings, but I felt like I would just put them in for your own like benefit to look into. I think that this is a pretty good idea, and I don't see why not why we couldn't be able to advocate for it. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions for the sponsor? Senator Morrow.
I guess I'm reading this and I'm a little, I just have a clarifying question, I'm a little unsure as to like the title in terms of like incentives you get professors, and then you discuss like a grant program,
right?
As well as like where you're getting these resources, and I know you cite like campus library, provost office, student financial aid department stuff. Just like, are we trying to incentive? Is the grant project working to incentivize professors and that we're giving them money, or like I'm sorry, I'm just like like where are we getting that money? Have you spoken to like actually cited for this money?
Right, that's a really good question. So the grant program is something that Sam and I kind of established that different universities that, for example, like University of Utah is pretty much like 94% based off like OERs. They created a grant program, basically give a loan to professors who are interested in publishing their work on a different OER, and in return, they will either receive some sort of funding or some sort of like prestige. And then the three different groups, the provost office, the student financial aid department, and the campus library, I kind of put I did put a definition of how the library could help us in providing funds, but the provost office and the student financial aid department are probably going to be the most useful medians. I have spoken to Bonta actually about this. She like randomly called me one day and we were talking about how to go about navigating this along with two other bills we were all working on. And she said the best step is to, one, make sure that you have a list of different OERs, and then two, to just set up an appointment with a financial aid advisor and get a group of students from Senate who are also just as passionate about making it happen, and then you can go from there. So that's all the information I have right now, but as far as the grant thing, also, really cool bill that the U.S. Senate actually, well, not even a bill, a resolution of the U.S. Senate established regarding OERs is linked somewhere, and then we can also use that as a form of evidence or just like extra info when we're negotiating for a higher number of faculty members to be published. So, I don't know, I hope that was good.
Other questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, without objection, this bill is going to be referred to the Committee on Student Rights and Services. All right, moving on to the next agenda item. The clerk will read the legislation by name and title.
Policy Book 17-18-005, a policy book for the Judicial Register.
Okay. So as Noah presented earlier, it's just an update to the Judicial Register. Typically, the register is supposed to be like revised and presented in the first semester, but we're doing it now just because it was never updated. And he already presented on some of the changes that he proposed and the J board was looking at. Anything else you want to add to it?
Yeah, I didn't, if you look at the current judicial register, it doesn't follow the same format. I literally started from scratch because of how, I don't want to say bad the other one was, but like, it was inconsistent with our other government documents. So.
Questions for either of us? Senator Zitzman.
For you, policy books get 2 readings, right?
Yeah. Other questions? Seeing none, this will be referred to CRP without objection. Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, the clerk will read the legislation by name and title.
Resolution 17-18-16, a resolution to build a pathway between Hearst and East.
When they can't use those pathways, especially during rain, snow, or any environmental condition. So this is pretty much a resolution that's pretty much telling the university to go build a pathway, and if we need to work on a budget, that yeah. So, okay.
Questions for the sponsor? Senator Hawk.
Thank you. So I think this is a good idea. Two questions. One, I guess, can you explain what this pathway looks like? And then also,
It's so pretty much what it was described as just going follow the, basically a sidewalk. It's very straightforward. It's a cement sidewalk built by using 2010 standards, which is pretty much standard which we use right now, currently right now. So it's pretty much any government. So like it's literally like here's like the dimensions, the like limitations of like how big pathway would be. Then pretty much just cement and like go build it. It's not really anything like special. Right, so like it won't cost us that much, so funding's on the issue.
okay, and then the second question is, have you spoken with any relevant universities?
Yeah, I'm about to do that in the coming weeks, just because I did this and stuff, I just wanted to get past just to ensure that, hey, pathway, which is pretty much like the issue saying, like, you want to see something. Cost-wise, I've done my research into it, it really isn't that much, because it's not going over any potholes or anything, or like, any, what's called structure under, by
Senator Polinsky.
Just wondering why you chose a resolution.
Well, actually, resolutions are defined as things that which the church mandate to the, like the university do stuff that those are within AUSG. And so like I don't see any reason why I should have made it a bill, because AUSG isn't the one who's going to build the pathway. I don't think any of us want to donate our hours to go outside and like those are building stuff. Like I don't see that as like a solution. So like that's why it's a resolution. So because it's like just telling me to like go hire some people to do it. So.
Senator Zitzman.
Just to clarify, when I first read this, I thought it was like you go from Hearst and you walk to EQB, but it's not that, right?
No. So pretty much it's so you know where East Campus is, right? And then there's like a crosswalk, like between Hearst and
Okay, so it's like from the quad to the.
yeah, all the way to the quad. Yeah. If you go there, you'll see like it's pretty trampled over and stuff. So.
Other questions? Senator Fryer's proxy.
Just as someone who lives on East Campus, I think this is a good idea because like people are gonna walk up there either way, and like as you just said, like it's really gross. Like if it's raining or snowing or anything, like it's already really muddy and the grass is all ripped up. So if we're gonna build a path there, now is the best time because we wouldn't have to rip up any grass, and it's just like ecologically better for the environment not to trample all over the grass, just like and all that stuff, like, so it's like a good time now more than ever to do it. So
Also, I'd also like to comment on the timing specifically, just because we're going to go into summer and it's pretty much the perfect time to go start building and stuff, because it's like weather conditions are over, start turning to spring, it won't be as wet. So.
Further questions? Seeing none, we'll move into debate. Any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of adopting resolution 17-18-016, say yay. Yay. All those opposed, say nay. All right, this is adopted. Yes.
I move to give the student trustees speaking rights to the next resolution. The discussion. Second.
There's a second. All those in favor of granting student trustee Fernandez speaking rights, say yay. Yay. All those opposed, say nay. Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item. The clerk will read the legislation by name and title.
Resolution 17-18-17, a resolution to ask the student trustee to report to Senate after each board meeting.
Would the sponsor like to speak on the resolution?
Sure. We have the rules that this way, it's pretty straightforward, but the point is that after every single board of trustee meeting, hopefully within a 1 to 2 week span, we can have whoever the presiding student trustee individual is, to just give a brief Q&A to Senate, largely because we do live stream it, so we do have viewers, for those on campus who are interested, and also for us to clarify questions that we'd like to ask in the board of trustees meeting, which we can't attend because it is private. And then it also just asks whoever the student trustee is at that point in any point in time, to have a semesterly based campus survey that is well, what's the word, like advertised for students to be able to participate in, because there are a lot of pressing issues on campus, whether it's with tuition, whether it's with divestment, whether it's with like open textbooks, or even retracting an honorary degree, that I know that I can never be able to discuss to a board trustee member, but I know a lot of students would love to have that individual advocate for and to know that their voice is being heard. So yeah, that's about it.
Questions for the sponsor, Senator Agdepa.
Well, actually, I was wondering if I could ask this student trustee for this.
Let's wait till after the questioning period. Senator Mejia.
I was just wondering if you asked the student trustee about the feasibility of this, about whether it's something that she can do, or and whether you spoke to them at all.
I didn't necessarily, largely just because I'm not mandating anyone to do anything. It's just like, hey, if you'd be interested to show up, here you are. It's nothing controversial, to be honest. Like Valentina, like thank you so much for coming today. That was absolutely amazing. If you'd be interested next time, love to have you again. Like it's very like casual. It's nothing too, I don't know. Like I don't know how it would be put to a word.
Other questions, Senator Najafi.
Like you said just now, like I feel like it's something we just have a conversation about, like the resolution. That's something that I think we have to move forward and ask them about setting that in place going forward. But I feel like the resolution isn't necessary to sort of valid here right now, or you can just like move on as well.
Is that a question?
So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks for that statement question, but that's true. I could just totally ask the student trustee at any point, but I don't even know if I'm going to be like, we have this entire like SG thing. They obviously get elected, so it's ongoing for any individual in the future who would like to reach out to the student trustee. Also, I think specifically after board of trustee meetings, it is super important to know, what necessarily is going on. Largely just because there's really no transparency between that meeting. And I could just continuously, until my senior year, ask for the residing trustee members to come into SG. But I do think that this existence would be a quick reminder to any future SG members as well to utilize a campus resource and somebody who has been elected to that position. But yeah, I guess so.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you. So given what the student trustee told us earlier in this meeting about how that position is not one of student advocacy, how would that affect this resolution? Because it looks like the resolution says that the student trustee should, gather student concerns and then advocate for all of them at these meetings.
Right. So, you're right, the student trustee position during the meeting is probably not an advocacy role, but afterwards, I know at least from my own discussions around like attendance different club meetings and how oftentimes the board of trustees does come up. A lot of students are concerned that their club causes are not really being recognized in a room of really wealthy older people. And so just having that individual kind of, make it apparent that they are listening, but also that they support the student initiative. It doesn't have to be the cause, but just the student initiative and student activism is really important. And then having that kind of like Q&A that we just had right now, I think is really important to just garner more insight on the process of what necessarily the student trustee is doing, and then also like, are the senatorial representatives' concerns valid? And if not, like, what did we necessarily do? Because in my opinion, I could be having a one-on-one discussion with whoever the board of trustee member is, but inviting them to come for all of us to be more aware is probably like shooting like birds with one. Is that in my, I don't know, English not my language, but yes. So.
Senator Polinsky.
I was just wondering, I know Valentina talked about how a lot of the stuff that goes on in meetings is confidential. So I just envision this if she does come and has to present, that a lot of her answers are going to either be purposely vague or she'll just say she can't answer. So do you think that could pose as a problem in the future?
I mean, I don't really see it posing as a problem because we just had an amazing informative discussion right now, and I learned a ton that I didn't even know before regarding fossil free. And now you all know if you'd like to go to fossil free like meetings, which, by the way, please go, because they have not seen most people in this room. That is a big concern to most kids. So yeah, I don't see it being, I mean, obviously I'm not gonna be asking whoever the student trustee is to tell me every single like detail about the meeting. I understand that a lot of it is disclosed.
Questioning has elapsed. We'll move to a peer to debate. Senator Agdepa.
I just have a point of inquiry. So at the meetings, the AUC president also is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand why we would need a student trustee to be reporting back here if the AUC president is already reporting here at this body. They could report on the exact same facts from there and question them. And I see it's just redundancy.
Senator Mejia.
I would just like to voice my strong disapproval of this resolution. I think that, first of all, the student trustee is not a member of student government, so we shouldn't be trying to enforce what they're doing in their free time. If they wish to come, that's amazing, but they're incredibly important and they're also incredibly busy. So we shouldn't be telling them they have to come after every single meeting, especially because usually when they come after the meetings, we're going to be wanting them to tell us stuff that they can't do. So we can just read the memo, and that's going to be pretty much everything that they can tell us anyways. So we might as well not waste any more of their valuable time.
Just a point of clarification, resolutions aren't enforcing or binding in any way. Senator Chen.
Yeah, I was going to say what you were going to say to clarify, like they've asked the student trustee to come if they can, if they have time in their schedule, doesn't mandate it. But I'm strongly in favor of this resolution because I think someone just said in here earlier today, bad legislation comes from misinformation or just like a lack of understanding. I think it's really important, especially after board meetings, for there to be like, yes, like a lot of this information is confidential and can't be shared to like the fullest transparent extent. But I do think like a summary of what was talked about, the topics that were covered, like are the topics that we want to be being covered, are they being covered? Are they being discussed in general? Like I think that's very important. And like I said, like this encourages the board, the student trustee to come, doesn't mandate it. I think it's important to set a precedent that we want to be in the loop. The undergraduate senate wants to be in the loop and wants to know what's happening beyond just like what we're doing and wants to create better and more informed legislation.
Senator Robbins.
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiments of Senator Chen and also point out that it's already been said, but even though we had a 40-minute conversation today, I thought it was a very substantive, important conversation for us all to have in helping to understand how we're moving forward with our legislation and how we are thinking about these broader issues. And so I understand that there's some concern about the time commitment and forcing somebody to come. This is not forcing somebody to come, it's asking them to please answer the questions, because at the end of the day, this is a body that is legislating, that is looking towards student issues, and if we're not getting the broader picture, then I don't know how we can go forward. So I want to voice my strong support of this resolution and hope that everybody else can as well.
Senator Najafi.
So like this resolution basically says after each meeting, like as in like come speak about the content. Like if you're talking about balance, if there was talk about composition with what it does in a broad sense, we learned a lot from that. And every Senate asked the next trustee, can you come and tell us what you do? But having them come after each meeting and talk about what happened there, and like if she can't answer specific questions, like that's something that could happen in one meeting where we're like explain what you do as a whole. And it is a resolution that's like a suggestion, and so if you want to institutionalize, this isn't going to do that. You need to go talk to the board and institutionalize it in that way versus like a resolution that in 10 years people aren't going to see or remember.
Senator Zitzman.
Can I ask the student trustee her thoughts on the resolution?
Would you take a question?
Huh?
Would you take a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So personally, I completely agree with coming back onto a board meeting. Like I'm more than happy. Sometimes scheduling might be tricky, you know, the little myself, like I do work sometimes on Sundays. That's how I'm able to fund my AU education a lot of times. But with that being said, like I don't mind taking 10, 15 minutes to answer any questions. I'm not quite sure what the purpose of having this on a resolution would be, just because, like I'm happy to do it as Leela mentioned earlier, like I'm happy to do it just like if someone were like asking informally. However, as to the point to like kind of institutionalize it. I want to reiterate that the student trustee is not a member of student government, and it's really up to each student trustee to kind of develop their own practices. As a student trustee myself, like, so there is like that shadow period, right, where this trustee of like this learning. I would be more than happy to like suggest to them and be like, this is something I'm doing, like, it should be something that you highly consider as well, because I do think it's important to like answer these broad questions. Like, I do think it's important to have informed legislation. I highly, like, I don't think there's a way to, I don't think a resolution is necessary for that. However, what I do want to talk about a little bit is the survey aspect that this bill talks about. This is the part where I completely disagree with. To be quite honest, we have offices dedicated to like student surveys, from the Office of Provost to Jim Yellis, working on things for first year students, to National Higher Education, institutionalized surveys that AU does every other year or every year. From my experience being in the boardroom, we have vice provosts, we have Jessica Waters coming in, we have people that analyze these surveys, faculty, staff, presenting on it pretty frequently. In fact, it's really hard to think of a conversation that we've had about the student experience that hasn't been data driven. And the content of these surveys really vary from diversity and inclusion to mental health services to the overall general satisfaction of student life at AU. So I think there's always room for growth, but if there's one thing I can say about the boardroom is that numbers drive a lot of things. And that's like a hard line because like numbers versus stories, but from my experience, they drive a lot of the discussions and they're based on a lot of survey results that I'm frequently asked to chime in as a student based on my own personal experiences, but also my observations. And so has the student government president before. So that's kind of like my main concern with the bill. Another thing I think someone brought up with the student government president is in the boardroom. Yes, they are. I think a lot of the confidentiality things would still apply to the student government president, which is another point. However, with that being said, I should have talked about this maybe, but something I've been working on personally as a student trustee to like increase a little bit of communication between the board and the students has been to actually try to find and like pilot. So after a board meeting, highlighting one topic of discussion that is like highly relevant to students, and then having sort of like a panel video recording being made. So it would be like, for example, the student trustee, Chairman Jack Cassell, and another random board member, or President Virgo, or something like that. And it can just be like a moderated discussion by the student trustee being like, okay, today we talked about X, Y, Z. Can you tell us a little bit about why we had this conversation? What are some key elements that the board is discussing? And that's kind of like something that I came up on my own. And to be completely honest, I'm not sure, like it probably won't be able to be done for this meeting this week, but it might be a possibility for the May board meeting, or if anything else, I've laid out a foundation for the next student trustee to be able to pick up on. So I do want to like make it clear, like I personally, as my personal view, like I do think the student trustee should act as a liaison between students and the board and communicating what's going on both sides of the aisle back and forth. I just don't know if this is the way to go about it.
Hold on. You're withdrawing it?
Yeah.
Is possible?
Like, I really like the idea of you having a live stream. All my entire intent was just to increase transparency. There's no need for this.
Yeah, to clarify though, it wouldn't be a live stream because that was my original thought. The problem with that is that we wouldn't be able to have closed captioning for it as it happens. And then if we want to make it like an official AU thing, it doesn't meet like their accessibility requirements. So it would be like a recorded thing that we do after a board meeting that we can play, and then we'll play along with like, like submit any questions via emails or something like that.
While I figure out if this is the right time to withdraw it, are there points of discussion? Senator Hawk.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that from a legislative perspective, I don't think that this, I think if it's being put on us, I think that would make make most sense because it would also create a disparate impact because we would be saying that the Senate wants the student trustee to report after every meeting, but we would not be applying the same standard, other student leaders like the ASG president, vice president, comptroller, secretary, case director, KPU director, women's initiative director. The last time the women's initiative director came was actually, I think, last semester. We don't say that we want that person coming every meeting, so I think that sort of disparate, discriminatory impact is not something we want to pursue. And so I would encourage that we draw or fail this resolution.
Can I add something? Sorry.
Yes.
Really quickly, sorry, this isn't maybe relevant to this specific bill, but just I figured some information for you all to know. So for the committee meetings, I should have brought this up earlier when I presented. So the comptroller sits in the finance and investment committee, and then the student government president sits in the academic affairs committee and the campus life committee. And they're free to talk whenever they want in those committees, by the way, if random info.
Senator Hakami?
To call this discriminatory is pretty offensive. I don't think it's too much to just ask for a little bit more transparency. I personally would actually give anything to be able to talk to one of these board of trustees members, considering how much passion I have for literally every single freaking bill I bring to the Senate. So the controversy I don't see. If it is disliked pretty overwhelmingly by everyone, there's no need to even be discussing it right now, but just asking a member to come at the appropriate time, even if it's 2 weeks after a board of trustee member, would be so amazing for me and all of the people who watch. Because I don't know what happens. I can't communicate with them. And a lot of the stuff that I'm trying to get accomplished needs to go through them, right? And so that level of transparency and dialogue is so necessary that I don't know if Women's Initiative can accomplish. I don't know if KPU can accomplish or CASE, because none of those people get to talk to the board of trustees. So just leaving it at that, this isn't that important. We can fail this. But to call it discriminatory is a direct offense to somebody who just wants to see what's going on.
Senator Robbins?
Just a point of inquiry, and perhaps based on that point of discussion. I know I'm new, but a resolution is not binding, it's not forcing as a bill, is correct, Mr. Speaker?
That's correct.
Okay, so, I just want to say, we're talking about this in terms of it's a piece of binding legislation. It's not. It's simply asking this. It's simply saying that, based on the conversations that we had today, we think it'd be great if the student trustee came. It's not required, but we think it'd be great if they were included in this conversation. Because I want to reiterate again, even though we spent 40 minutes of our time talking, we all had some very substantive questions, and there was a great dialogue that was had, I think. So maybe you all disagree with that, but I think that it's not binding. It's simply just saying hey, the student trustee should stop by. And I think that is important because if the goal of the student trustee is to act as somewhat of a liaison between the student voice and not advocate, but just bring in that student voice, we also are a part of that student voice. We are the student government. That's the name of this body. So I don't understand why we wouldn't pass this because it's not binding and it's just simply saying we're a student organization that seeks to want to have that physical table and ask those really important questions.
Director Payano?
Yeah, I think that we're confusing two things. It's not that the idea of the resolution is wrong. I think it creates animosity between people and bodies that already exist, and we're talking about changing the culture of student government. I think it would have been a different thing if you kindly asked somebody, hey, I would love to have you next meeting, and just come and give us who you want to do whatever. And if you haven't seen the WI director or the KPU director, that's a simple message away. Do you know what I mean? Instead of making everything so constitutionalized, because sometimes I think that sometimes making it into anything written is great, but then sometimes I think it hinders that personal connection with other people. But however, I think the intent of this resolution is great. I just feel from what I'm seeing, observing, I'm not telling my personal opinion. I think that some people are advocating for the sense of oh, you don't need to have it in writing. You can just shoot them an email as a friend or as a, whatever, versus trying to keep cultivating this institutionalized thing against each other.
And to add on to that, if I can, to your point about making it more consistent, because you can't rely that whoever is in this position 10 years from now will feel the same way I do about it. Because I agree with your sentiment, I really do. What I can do personally, and this goes back to like, we could have fleshed this out of our coffee discussion or something though, is, so one of the things I'd actually like to do is just like create like a one-pager memo for the person that comes after me. And that way it can be something that whoever the next student trustee is can keep on adding to every single year. And I will make sure to include this in this, like I can tell you that for sure.
Just quick, point of clarification, were these ideas you were thinking about earlier on in the semester or only after? You realized this resolution was written?
As far
The
as,
memos and all of the transparency aspects.
so
that
the
we're talking
video,
about
the
today.
memo, these were all ideas before, based on other feedback from also working with the graduate and law school students. Specifically reporting to the Senate, it can just be something I add on that.
Awesome.
So as an update, you can motion to rescind the legislation if you choose, or you just choose to vote on it.
Motion to rescind legislation.
Okay. Requires a second, and there's a second. This motion is debatable. Are there any points for or against rescinding? Senator Zitzman?
Yeah, I think it's just the most, just elegant, I suppose is the best word, but not really a great word for it. But yeah, it's just the smoothest way to go about it. But I do think that the whole debate on this resolution kind of missed the mark. We're kind of going off all over the place. Just in general, I do think it would be a good idea to have a tradition of communication between student trustee and student government for benefit of student government, just to know what's going on. Just hopefully that can go on without this resolution.
Okay.
So why not just vote on it and see where it goes? It seems like there's a solid group of you guys that are pro it. So not because not everybody's speaking means that everybody's against it or for it. I think that you guys should give it a shot. That's just my personal opinion. That's why you guys can vote.
Under, is it a point for against rescinding the legislation?
I think that we should just vote on it. So whatever that.
Okay, so that's a point for. Is there a point for against rescinding the legislation?
Related to, just come on, this affects me.
Okay.
So if you guys do choose to vote on it, sure, like you do you. I would strongly urge you to completely remove all of the information about the survey aspect though. I think I kind of covered why that would not be helpful at the time, or I don't really see it being helpful in the future considering, like if anything, I think if you have concerns about what the topics of the surveys are, that's true to like reach out to like Jimmy Ellis or someone being like, hey, can you tell me a little bit about what these surveys are covering? And things like that. Second, I have a second point, I really can't remember.
So just amend it basically.
Yeah, amend it, so do whatever you want with it, but I remember as a senator, like one of my biggest frustrations is when you pass something and then you know it's just gonna stay in a binder because there's no way to enforce it, right? Keep that in mind. You, like, again, like it won't affect me and I'm happy to present, but just keep that in mind, is all I will say.
Points for or against rescinding the legislation, Senator Robbins?
I'm against rescinding this because I agree with what Director Pano said. I think it's important that we vote on this, but I also think it's important that we move on. I think we've really exhausted this. I believe it was 2 weeks ago, we discussed this whole idea that maybe we debate things for too long and that we actually have other really more pressing things to discuss. I'd like to motion to vote on whether or not we're going to rescind this.
And then.
Well, okay, point of order.
Are we not in debate right now about motion to rescind? So we have to vote on motion to rescind before we vote.
But he motioned to close debate
Yes.
on rescinding.
I thought he meant close debate in total.
No, just close debate on rescinding.
Point of inquiry.
Point of inquiry.
Once we vote to rescind, can we then motion to amend?
If the body votes yes to rescind it, then this is gone.
Okay.
If they vote no, then we're back to the discussion on
And
the
we can
direct.
amend.
Yes.
Point of inquiry.
Point of inquiry.
Can we consult the parliamentarian? Is everything later? Okay. I
You
just want to make
question
sure
me?
that it makes sense that I don't know why for me, but it doesn't make more sense that if you want to rescind something, you can just rescind it, so it's not possible.
I mean, but that's how it's laid out. Okay. There was a motion to close debate on whether or not to rescind the legislation. Is there a second? There is a second. Okay. All those in favor of rescinding the legislation, say yay.
No.
Oh, no, yeah, we have to close the debate first. Sorry, my bad. All those in favor of closing debate to vote on rescinding the legislation, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay, now, all those in favor of rescinding the legislation, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay.
Yay.
Okay, there's a division. All those in favor of rescinding the legislation, please raise your hand. All those opposed? In a vote of 7-6, the legislation is rescinded. Therefore, it's withdrawn, and we're going to move on. Because that required only a majority, right? Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next legislation. The clerk will read the name and title.
Directive 17-18-005, a directive to update the AUSG website with every appointed position.
Would the sponsor like to speak on the directive? Floor is yours.
Yeah, so this is obviously not complicated at all. Updates the website in relation to the bill that I was talking about earlier. It's just in the interest of transparency, making sure that the student body is aware of the makeup of their student government. I don't really have anything else to say. It would just be the same format that the Senate website positions are in. I don't know. We wanted, like, I don't know. I don't think every position in student government have like a headshot picture. So I think it would just be, a short bio, their AUSG email, and whatever other form of contact is available. Pretty straightforward. Questions or
All right. Senator Zitzman.
Is anybody here on the Secretary's Cabinet by chance?
What?
I was asking if anybody is in the Secretary's Cabinet or knows the status of that project that the Secretary was working on compiling the directory, because that would be useful information.
Senator Polinsky.
The last time I talked, like that basic version was done. They were still working on creating a master list, but I haven't heard anything from the last one about it. Yeah.
Is that a question?
So there's your, I don't know how to present it.
Remember, this is just questioning, guys. Senator Dantzler's proxy.
My question would be just in terms of concision and fees, and this will also end up cutting down on time. Couldn't this have been part of your first bill that you introduced earlier, or that bill a part of this bill, because they're relating to the same thing? So have them report and also have them put it on the website and make that just one bill about reporting and notifying AUSG of appointments.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I guess they could be combined. That makes sense. Just okay. Yeah. I motion to rescind this. I think that's actually a really good point. Now I think about it.
You can, yes.
Yes. So
Okay. Is there a second? Points for or against rescinding this?
I would like to add the language of this into the bill that is going to be heard in CRP. So
Any other points for or against rescinding the legislation? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of rescinding this legislation, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, it is rescinded. Moving on to the next agenda item, the clerk will read the legislation by name and title.
A resolution 17-18-18, a resolution to promote a summer extension of UPass.
The sponsor, okay.
So we all love the UPass, great thing. Paying for like Metro and bus without UPass is ridiculous. Like I was here last summer and I was doing pretty much an unpaid internship, and I was paying around $160 a month just for the Metro, not even for the bus. And so let's promote it for the summer. Thoughts?
Questions? Senator Robbins.
Have you been in touch with the secretary?
Yeah. So Chris is like having meetings with people about the pilot program and the discussion. So I just made this to give them like a whole piece of legislation of a resolution just saying that the student body and student body support it.
Other questions? Senator Aljaber.
So would this be for all students regardless of if they're taking summer classes or not? So this is just applying to like what the program is as of now. So like anyone who's staying in summer and like is a part like that can have it during the school year pretty much. So if you're like a student now and you're doing classes in the summer, it's just pretty much like if you're living in DC, you have to. Okay, because the program as of now you have to be like you have to have registered credit. And last summer I was taking 15 credits over the summer and it didn't count, but, and I graduated, so I really don't matter. But if I was staying in DC, because I usually stay in DC and I wasn't registered for classes over the summer, it would also apply. Yeah. If I was
Senator Polinsky.
I'd like to motion to vote by unanimous consent.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any objection to adopting this resolution? Seeing none, it is adopted. All right. Any other, where is it? Any other new business? All right, seeing none, we'll move to old business. The clerk will read the legislation by name and title.
Bill 17-18-15, a bill to foster school spirit in Senate activities.
Would the sponsor like to speak on the bill? Questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we'll move into a period of discussion. Any points of debate or discussion on the bill? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of adopting Bill 17-18-015 say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. It is adopted. Or what?
We have 16 right now. We're good.
Yeah, we have 27 total. Yeah, we're good. All right, moving on to next agenda item. The clerk will read the legislation by name and title.
Bill 17-18-18, a bill to amend the bylaws regarding states of exception.
Would the sponsor like to speak on the bill? Okay. Moving to a period of discussion. Any members of anyone? Any points of discussion or debate on the bill? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of adopting Bill 17-18-018 say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. All right, it is adopted. Any other old business? All right, seeing none, we'll move to a period of public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak at this time? Yes.
Really great talking to you all today. Don't want to take this any longer than it needs to, but always Facebook message, email, text message away. Happy to answer any questions with that every time. Whether you have specific questions on any projects you're working on, or if you yourself are also interested in potentially being a mutual agreement partner as well.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll move to good of the order. Any executive good of the order?
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to try to make my presentation really quickly, which is why I didn't breathe. I really, really hope that you guys get interested in any of the events or any of the information that I had interest you. Please feel free to reach out to me. And if anybody have any questions, I'm always open for coffee, dinner. My Black American Express, aka my ID, would get you guys into TV.
Other executive good of the order? All right, moving to senator good of the order. Senator Kami.
talked to Monta, finished last week, and there's two things I just want to bring up, if anyone else is interested in partaking in, because there's a lot of shit to do. So there's a resolution I wrote a while back to attract an honorary degree on Sun Tzu Chi, and it's in relation to the Myanmar crisis. Now, no lost generation is helping me out with it, and Monta told me to write a one-page summary of what necessarily I want accomplished, and then just set up a petition, and either she or any other representative can hopefully get that into the Board of Trustees meeting. So if you're interested in helping me edit or write, hit me up. And then the meeting with Caitlin and Eric in regards to the Open Textbook Network is going to be next week on Thursday around like 5:30 p.m. If you're interested in attending, like Facebook message me, text me. The Google Excel form for world languages and courses, please do that. I mean, I just went into like the room for Arable Studies and I talked to like two guys and they're like, okay, let's do it. So it worked out. I don't really see it being too stressful. If it doesn't happen, we can work on it together and figure out a plan. And then the final thing is just, if you're interested or you know a group of people who are interested in being featured on Campus Progressive, please let me know. A lot of it is just outreach and highlighting student activism, because I think that's probably the most important tool us as students have to use in any case or scenario, and we should be applauding those who have been fighting. So that's about it.
Other senators go to the order. Senator Zitzman.
So update on the Unified Code Commission. There were a bunch of senators here who served on the commission at the beginning of the meeting, but most of them have left. So now it's just Ben and Saram and me. But we have 2 weeks to finish, so get working. And also, I already told Saram, but also to Josh Llewellyn, who are here, and Ben. Brian, who did like half of your work already, so if you see him, thank him, and also get working. It's really easy, but I want it to be finished on time, so get to it.
Other senator go to the order. Senator Mejia.
With that though, let's talk about the campus school spirit. We should really all go to a game together, because first of all, that'd be really fun, and second of all, sports teams still need fans. So yeah, that's it.
There's a game on Saturday, right?
Senator Jaffe.
A bunch of them.
I just want to say thank you to Valentina for coming today and presenting on what the position is. Really appreciate it.
Other senator go to the order. All right. Some final things. 1, be sure to go to office hours. 2, I will not be in the office on Tuesday, but every other time, I'm accessible. Please meet with me if you have legislation that's passed. You are sort of actually required to by my first legislative order. So if you sponsored any legislation, meet with me. Let's talk about next steps. If you have any questions moving forward with like future legislation, meet with me, meet with executives. We can talk about it, meet with Cheyenne. She's a great resource. And if y'all know any COGOD people, encourage them to apply. We're looking for a COGOD senator. Or if you know any 2018 people, encourage them to apply by just sending me an email with the resume. Trying to get those last 3 seats filled. And besides that, you know how to reach me. So if there's no other go to the order, we are adjourned.
That was a low clap. Now, we need to work on our claps. Yeah.
Yes. Technically, you can.
Let's see if we can get somebody to
Okay.
The person comes on the
I mean, we can on Wednesday.
What?
Wednesday.
Yeah. When's your office hours?
Tuesday, that's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I'm in the office after 2:30. Yeah.
Here are the.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. You can just leave them right there. I'll grab them. Thank you.
So our thing is,
Really? You're in the server.
they wanted a free.
Let me make sure that the email I have for you
It wasn't
is.
a big one, because I didn't even, I told her I didn't get any size.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting.
We are engaged. That's what, like, we want to hear what all of you guys are saying, connect the communities together. And to hear where you guys are, what you guys need, because it's better to hear from the people that are going through that. And this is an essential portion of the inclusive excellence plan, which is why I'm trying to not only do a meeting with the Latin experts, but also with the Asian American group. And now that,
Okay, I'm gonna reach out to Chris again and make sure that he gets you that.
cool, thank you. But then in terms of listening, like that's what we're there for, listening, making sure that your concerns are well articulated.
Digital copies? Yeah, Chris or Brian, why? Oh, on the bylaws? Well, they, like, I guess Chris and Brian, like, they just upload the documents that are sent to them. So whoever sent them the bylaws, I don't know, I guess there's just, I would talk to,
and then after that, like literally.
probably Brian. Talk to Brian, he could fix that.
And because there's gonna be different stakeholders in the group, it's not only both like the.
Yes, please.
You guys can all express your.
Have a good evening.
You too.
And then I think I'm tapping, like, make sure that you have your Facebook traffic. But then I'm gonna be open a lot of some stuff that's like. Not just like, or rather than doing. So, I think it's a great opportunity. Val, are you leaving me? I'm sorry. I know, but I'm going to.
couldn't say much, I recanted.
I was gonna email you the document.
So Dr. Dickerson has also like, she's been working behind the scenes, making sure that what we told her is being heard. The things that you need to understand that Dr. Dickerson is new to her role. So because she's new to her role, she consults a lot before things happen. So right now, she and Tiffany talk to me and other members and they have come up.
And it's like, hey,
They're trying
do you
to
still need
meet
someone? It's like,
where,
yeah.
and like.
See you on Monday, Trevor.
See ya.
Have a conversation. So that is happening, it just takes a longer time because she's new on her job.
I'm not assuming that I actually think that the TCDI actually does this. I know a lot of organizations like groups are actually infamous of doing this, and again, I'm not.
No, hey, I sit in the PCDI and my entire thing is to.
But I'm not concerned that it's more like a protocol person.
No,
You know, like,
we're not
hey,
taking pictures.
There's a bunch of Latinx students and we're actually doing things when they're actually not.
No.
Like, I'm not accusing the PCDI.
No, I totally understand. Well, that's what I'm here for, to kill those rumors. We're not taking pictures with you guys. We're not, necessarily doing anything